Okay, we're so thrilled to welcome our next speaker to the World Summit AI stage. She is a world-renowned opening headliner on the subject of AI and entertainment. She's talking about balancing creativity and opportunity. Hilary Mason is a co-founder and CEO of Hidden Door. Prior to Hidden Door, she was general manager of the machine learning business unit at Cloudera. And unfortunately, due to a last-minute emergency, she cannot be here today, but we're delighted that she joins us live from wherever you are. Where are you joining us from, Hilary?
Hi, I'm in New York, in Brooklyn.
Okay, I love Brooklyn, one of my favorite parts of town. Thank you so much for joining us. Looking forward to the Q&A with you. I will hand over to you. Looking forward to your talk. Thanks, Hilary.
Thank you so much. And hi, everybody. I'm also really sad I couldn't be there in person, but I'm glad I get to share in all the fun remotely. And I always find that Brooklyn and Amsterdam share a lot of aesthetics and a lot of good taste. So hopefully we'll be aesthetically aligned. And I'm really excited to speak today about AI and entertainment, which I think is a little bit of a fun end of day direction because the way we think about using the same mathematics and the same procedures that we might use for doing things like optimizing the heating and cooling in a large event building can also make for really exciting, entertaining gaming and immersive experiences. And so that's what I'm going to talk about. And I wanted to start by saying, it's the year 2024. And for those of us who have been working with this tech and in this field for a long time, it has only gotten more and more full of hype and more full of fear. And so I'm really excited to be able to talk about what this technology brings to us and how we can navigate the challenges ahead of us in a way that really creates wonderful experiences, because fundamentally this technology allows us to create new kinds of immersive creative experiences that were just not possible before, and that's what I want to talk about today. Personally, I have a lot of experience building different kinds of experiences with machine learning, and I want to share some of those with you so you can appreciate some of these perspectives. In 2009, I was a professor of computer science and wrote some scripts to automate a bunch of my email, and it went horribly awry. It ended up sending, my mother an automated reminder to reply to something, and she called me all upset. Um, but this is something I've been interested in language generation for a long time. So in the year 2014, I founded a company called Fast Forward Labs, where we did applied machine learning and AI research and product co-development, mostly with folks in Fortune 500 sort of enterprises, but in a wide range of industries. And we built our first natural language generation system. This one created real estate advertisements. I will point out this was before Transformers, and it was an entirely different technical approach, but kind of a similar outcome. Um, it was inspired by this, which was an app that got banned from the App Store because it was I did not make this. I just saw it and totally got it entranced by it because there was an app where you could have a virtual boyfriend that was turned out to be abusive. And the reason why was because it was trained on bad data. It was trained on data crawled from Tumblr and Reddit. This was back in 2012. And it would just say things that were entirely non sequiturs or just really awful, and became extremely interested in how we could do this right. In 2015, used deep learning to build an image classifier. Again, learned how it went wrong because it worked really well for some things, but anything that looked like French fries near water, it said was a crab, right? And I share this with you to show that we don't often come to conferences like this and talk about the things that went wrong, but also in the spaces that go wrong is a lot of, let's say, creative potential. Um, After that, I sold that company to Cloudera, ran their AI machine learning business unit, and tried to do a whole marketing campaign in 2018 around how AI was too hyped and we should make it boring again and just focus on building really useful and valuable things. And that did not go very well. Also, but the message is still the same. And now I am building Hidden Door, which is an entertainment company, but it builds on the same mathematics and the same AI capabilities of all of these other applications. And I'm going to tell you what we do and then talk about entertainment and creativity more broadly. Um, what we do is create a place for fans to go into their favorite fictional worlds and to play. And so it's for anyone who, reads a book and still thinks about it, anyone who watches a movie and is like, "Oh, I would have fought that guy this way." Um, Anyone who has ideas and opinions about worlds that they have some passion or affection for. And so we imagine that we take the original story, the original creative piece of content, and then we make it a little bit of a cinematic universe where the fans and the players get to drive what happens in their own version. And this is an experience that exists in many forms already. It exists around a tabletop role playing game like Dungeons and Dragons, where you have a person telling you that story. It exists in places like theme parks, where you can immerse yourself in a particular world. But these are not experiences that are easily accessible. And so ours is one that runs on the web, on your anywhere you have a web browser, including a mobile phone, where you can jump into a world. These are some cards from the world of The Crow, the graphic novel that we adapted last month. And you can make choices, and those choices matter because it's not just following a pre-written script. It is following what you want to have happen. And this works in many different worlds. So the same underlying platform, here you can see a scene in Pride and Prejudice, a scene in a Lovecraftian, eldritch horror world, in The Wizard of Oz, which most folks I think are familiar with. It's sort of modern storybook fantasy, 1920s, and The Crow on the left. And so this is really saying that the opportunity space for AI and entertainment, our work being one example, is not just about making the artifact development cheaper. And it is really easy to look at something like ChatGPT or generative AI or any of the image generators or any of the video generators and think, okay, I can have this write a story, I can have this make a visual. But that's not where the real opportunity lies. That's, in fact, sort of anti creativity. This is broadly true outside of entertainment. When we look at where to find value with machine learning and AI, everyone starts with reducing costs of a process they're already running. And then once they have done that successfully, starts to think about the entirely new opportunities that can be built. And I've had a slide like this that I've used in every, sort of corporate presentation I've given on machine learning for years, because the first one seems to be where the value is because you have very clear ROI when you reduce the cost of something you're already paying for. But the second one is where the value is uncapped. So there is potentially an entirely new business or an entirely new product or a new way to engage. And getting people to think creatively like that is always a challenge. So even if you're not in entertainment, I'd urge you to think beyond number one, and start to think about number two. What do we particularly see here? Well, let's talk about what these models fundamentally are. And I think it's really important to approach questions of creativity and AI with a good conceptual understanding of what the technology really is. And so if we have to say in the most plain language what a large language model is, it's that it's trained on all of the language that can be scraped off the internet, including things like Reddit and forum posts, including all the books, whatever else, can be pulled in. There, it builds a compressed representation of the relationships between the tokens or the words, sort of in that language, and then it can output things that look like the things it was trained on. But that means that it is aspirationally creating the median of what it was trained on. So by design, by aspiration, it is mediocre. And I had an image generator make us a little trophy for this because we can celebrate that because it is tremendously useful and cool, but it has a bunch of limitations and problems at the conceptual level that we can think through because it can guide which opportunities are the right ones to invest in. So one of them is hallucinations. And back when I was working at Clutter and partnering with machine learning and AI folks across many industries, we did indeed deploy LLMs in many production scaled applications, many being a small number of many. Um, and hallucinations were a tremendous problem because if you're building a customer service application, you do not want your bot promising anything that is not real or not deliverable. You don't want it summarizing. One of the applications we built was summarizing changes in tax laws for um, accountants and advisors to give better guidance to customers. You want to make sure that they are double checking anything that might come out of those things so that they're not giving poor guidance. Um, most of these products were designed with a human review layer in them. This was also several years ago. But even so, we realized that sometimes hallucinations can also be a feature, particularly if you're in a fictional context where the potential problems are much smaller. Another issue that continues is bias. And so when we think about how the models are built and they compress the relationships between the tokens in the model, whether they're words or aspects of an image, what it does is compress it, it magnifies the bias in the underlying data. And so you can go do this for yourself on any image generator, but ask it what a presenter will look like, and you will always get a white man. And it is not wrong, but also it is not complete, right? It is magnifying the bias in the underlying data here. And also look at the audience too. They're all probably the same, white man. Um, and that's not the world we live in, nor is it the world we want to live in. And certainly in our fictional spaces, we need to be able to model a wide range of worlds and preferences. So it is important to understand that that is a limitation. And there are things you can build around models to reduce those in the ultimate experience if you're aware of them. As a total aside, I really want to appreciate that in this moment, image generation is still really poor at generating text, and it is absolutely delightful. And this will not last. It is getting much better every month. But it is completely worth asking. Like here, I asked for a antique pirate treasure map of Amsterdam, and you can see what what the median notion of what should be on that map would be here. There's a lot of Anne Frank all over Amsterdam, and that is probably for the best. But also, some of these things are relatively incoherent, and some of them are, great. It got, got Amsterdam, got our compass. Actually, one of them anyway. We have a north, south, east, east as well. But this is just fun, and we should appreciate it because it won't be around very long. And as we talk about some of the limitations to the technology, we also hear about things like RAG or RLHF, or ways that are technical approaches to managing, but not fundamentally changing the conceptual nature of how these things work. Um, and I say this all because it's really important for us to have a shared understanding of what the technology is before we talk about how to apply it. And I think this, like, entertainment is a really fun place to play, but it applies broadly no matter what your application is. And I do think that one of the delights of working in AI is that the math is the same, even if the product experience is quite different. And I say that as someone who's worked on social media, who's worked on computer vision for surgical robotics, who's worked on, causal inference and driver pooling. Um, and now on essentially storytelling. But the math is all the same, and that's absolutely delightful. I think we are broadly underselling the value of embeddings and being able to make language computable or make images computable in the sense that any sentence of language can be rendered as a vector that can be mathematically operated on. Because this lets us translate information and translate a notion of meaning um, in a way that a generative model might not. And there's that transformation. And the other thing I'll say is that here's a hot take, which is that writing prompts and prompt engineering is an artifact of current architectures that I don't think will persist more than 5 years from now. But context aware and multimodal generation, by which I mean the prompt is the context. The prompt might end up being the time series, it might be sensor readings, it might be videos, and it can generate not just text or images or video, but a variety of different formats. So let's talk about this in the context of entertainment. Um, One of the big topics of the moment in the industry is how AI is being positioned as something that will lower costs of creating films, TV shows, games. And that is not the case, at least not today. Today, it mostly shifts costs around, has an impact on quality, and is not a plug-in replacement for a lot of the sort of creative professionals who are currently employed creating these things. So I think it's important to say that out loud. But what does it do? It allows us to shift some of the creative work to our players or our fans in new kinds of experiences. It changes the role from being a writer of a script for a game to being more like a stage director. It requires an evolution, but it offers new kinds of interactive creative experiences where nobody has pre-written the end. And by that, I mean that if we watch a movie, we see exactly the same movie. If we play a game based on that movie, we largely have the same pre written story arc. But the opportunity here is that we don't have to anymore. It can be much more personal and therefore much more meaningful. It lets our players or our fans actually change the world that they're playing in a way that can be very significant and meaningful. And this is something we do practice at Hidden Door, but it's a broad possibility and a shift from a pre-written linear narrative to one that can have not just, 2 or 6 endings, but potentially any number, because we are shifting the production of the content that someone sees from ahead of time to the moment when they're playing. And these experiences become much more accessible. So here I have an image from the Galactic Star Cruiser experience that Disney created around Star Wars, an incredible immersive experience that unfortunately was not sustainable and was quite expensive. Only the most beloved worlds today get that kind of treatment. This technology allows every world to get that treatment, and also for the timelines to be tremendously shortened. So, for example, at Hidden Door, it takes us as little as a few hours to bring the world of a film into an interactive role playing experience. That means that it can be accessible for any beloved world, not just the ones that are themselves already tremendously successful. And that's why I think it's possible to make the argument that this will actually transform the industry in a very meaningful way that has nothing to do with the creative content. It has to do with the business dynamics. So today, the entertainment industry broadly, the film industry is organized around what it takes to create a film, the business models, the way people's careers are built, the skills people have, the way teams work together, how the culture of it is led, what good looks like. Same thing for the publishing industry. Same thing for TV, same thing for video games. But when you have a technology that can transform a fictional creative work from one of those formats into another with a very small cost, you suddenly change the economic equation significantly. And so my argument for you today is that AI is not about generating, the next novel in a series you love. It will never do that as well as the person who imagined that novel will. But it can take that novel and create a set of fan experiences around it and supporting it in a way that will have a tremendous impact on the economics of how we build, distribute the timing of our entertainment. And this is not even talking about the cross-cultural and cross-language affordances of being able to take something and almost real-time adapt it into a local context. This is tremendously powerful, and we are not yet seeing this at all. So how do we do it well? Um, First, I think building on the speakers who came just before me, having principles around responsible and ethical AI. Um, this is a very short book I co-authored some years ago with Mike Lukides and DJ Patil, who worked in the Obama White House. But it is really having these consistent beliefs in building from the math to the tech to the business in a way that makes sense and has sort of a strong ethical standpoint. Machines are not creative, people are. And this is my spicy take slide. Even if machines are creative, it is people's creativity that's necessary and that we care about. And when we design our businesses all the way up the entire stack, we have this tremendous opportunity space that is just opening up. It's really exciting. And this is a team sport. So we need a collection of skills. It is not just sort of throwing some AI engineers, but I think everyone here knows that. And AI itself is no longer an engineering and a math nerd problem. It is now a design and a business problem. That's where the hard parts are. So let's use it for what it's good for. Here's one example. I think we can all gently laugh at Google for, creating an experience that was not ideal. Try to pick ones that are better. Ignore the hype, be pragmatic, and let's build incredible experiences that honor human creativity while also building a really interesting business. And that's it. I'm Hilary. Again, really sorry I couldn't be with you all in person, and I really appreciate that I still get to share in the fun. And yeah, come find me, Hilary at hiddendoor.co, or come play a game with us.
Hilary, thank you so much. I really, really love that. I absolutely going to check it out. Round of applause. You have a full house here. So thank you so much for that wonderful talk. I built a similar game, a role-playing game using ChatGPT-4 because I used to play a game with my kids where I would get them to do an adventure, and they would put some things in their backpack and they'd go off and they'd have these challenges in these different worlds. And I created a role-playing game just using ChatGPT-4. Nothing as cool as what Hilary's talking about. We're going to tweet the prompt of the childhood game I play with my kids. So if you find me on Twitter, you can play this game. It's really cool, and you can adapt the rules to educate your kids in different worlds and get them to do math challenges. So I'm going to tweet the prompt if you follow me on Twitter. Hilary, thank you so much. Okay.